So, folks, you want to nominate a Democrat, a lifelong Democrat, a proud Democrat, and a Biden-Obama Democrat, join us.
That's about the most exciting thing that Joe Biden can come up with for why you should vote for him. Vote for an Obama-Biden Democrat. Just, he's trying to ride Obama's coattails now into the presidency after, keep in mind, Hillary Clinton got to elbow him out of the way the last time around. And now we're supposed to think that Joe Biden has become this really great candidate. Look, there are only a few other individuals' shows that I will ever listen to because I'm very busy working on my show and doing research for this and keeping producer Mark happy, which is a full-time job. So, I got to do things in here that require me to not focus on, not be able to listen to what else is out there all that much on radio and on podcasts. I'm doing my own thing. Joe Rogan is one of the few exceptions I will make if he has a really interesting guest. Because I do think that Joe Rogan, even though he's a Bernie Sanders endorser, which I think shows a lack of understanding of politics, but nonetheless, I still like Joe Rogan's interviews. He had this to say about Joe Biden. I just want to know, this is a guy who's endorsed Bernie Sanders. He's not a Republican at all. Here's what he says about Obama-Biden Democrat Joe Biden. Play clip 2.
Stop. Pause. You can't be president.
What?
Stop. Pause. Pause. Listen, we can't play any games here, folks. This is a really old man who can't talk.
I think he goes on even more than that, but he's just saying we can't do this. Like this guy does not seem like he's all there. This guy does not seem like he's somebody who could handle the physical and mental rigors of the job. And yet there's such a desperation from Democrats right now to have somebody other than Trump because they just want someone who will restore their power and will give them a Democrat voice at the bully pulpit of the Oval Office, able to just, spew the Democrat talking points. They want that. They don't care who it is. It doesn't matter. Anybody but Trump who's a Democrat will work for them. They were even playing footsie with the idea of it being a socialist Democrat. So it's not like I'm just coming up with this out of nowhere. There is a willingness to overlook extreme deficiencies in candidates as long as there's an opportunity to defeat Trump, whatever that may be. I think I'm not even sure if this was the soundbite. It's tough to keep up on which bizarre Biden soundbite is the one that people are noting. I think Rogan might have been referring to this one. He might have been referring to another one. But this is the latest Joe Biden flub. Play 1.
Turn this primary from a campaign that's about negative attacks into one about what we're for, because we cannot get reelect. We cannot win this reelection. We can only reelect Donald Trump.
We cannot win this reelection. We can only reelect Donald Trump. I mean, he stopped to try to pick his words, and that's what he comes up with. On the left, they make fun of Trump, and they say that he's got dementia, and they were very callous about that, I would note, too. I mean, I do try to be more cautious, being flippant about things like dementia. I mean, dementia is very sad, very serious, and a lot of people's loved ones will suffer from it. It's something that I wish we had better treatments for, better medication for. Alzheimer's is something that I wish we could cure, and we don't even really have much of anything to be able to fight back against it at this point. But when it was Trump, it was all, he's got dementia, he's falling apart, because he would say like too much. They said he sounded like a Valley Girl, or the way that his speech pattern would sort of just stop and go like this. And I mean, he sounds like a guy from Queens. I mean, I'm from here, so I know. There's nothing about him. I've never heard Donald Trump speaking and say, yeah, it's like he's a guy who's lost in a clinical medical sense. Like he can't understand where he is or what's going on. We've all had, I'm picking out Joe Rogan there, for example. Is he seeing something that's not there? Is he just some Trump bot? No, I know he endorsed Bernie Sanders, but his whole brand is that he tries to be a fair-minded person about things. And I've seen him talk to conservatives and do so respectfully. It's not impossible to do, by the way. A lot of libs out there seem to think that you can't have a reasonable discussion with an intelligent conservative on their media platforms, that it always has to be attack, destroy, get them. You know, they can't actually just do an exchange of ideas and let everybody come away from it a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser, and, you know, maybe a little bit more in touch with one another. Biden is a mess. And I also can't help but note that Kamala Harris decided to endorse Biden, because now Biden is the establishment candidate. He's the guy. Kamala Harris decided to endorse Biden over the weekend. But I remember what Kamala had to say about Biden when she was trying to beat him. And it seems a little bit self-motivated, doesn't it, for her to all of a sudden come out with this endorsement of Joe Biden. Play 15.
It was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
She went from that, let's be clear, essentially saying that Joe Biden is like kind of a racist, right? Why would he oppose busing for no good reason? Unless was being a little bit of a racist, right? I've talked to you about how if you look at the history of busing, it's much more complicated. If you look at how many kids who were bused hated it, didn't want it, their parents didn't want it, including black children, white children, didn't want it. Not all of them, but a lot of them. But politicians knew better, not allowed to have choice, sorry. Bigger social engineering to get through. Bigger social justice agenda to achieve at the expense of your kids, their future, their happiness, their day-to-day. It doesn't matter to Democrats. They got a bigger idea, right? That's the reality of busing. They never talk about this. They always just act like it was this unmitigated victory for civil rights and for nothing but good things come from it. But she went from that over the weekend to this. Play 3.
So I just wanted you guys to know, because you've been supporting me for so long, and I just wanted you guys to know I have decided that I am, with great enthusiasm, going to endorse Joe Biden for President of the United States. I believe in Joe. I really believe in him, and I have known him for a long time. One of the things that we need right now is we need a leader who really does care about the people and who can therefore unify the people. And I believe Joe can do that. I am supporting Joe because I believe that he is a man who has lived his life with great dignity. He is a public servant who has always worked for the best of who we are as a nation, and we need that right now. There is so much at stake in this election, guys.
He's always worked for what's best, except for being a racist about busing, right? What did I miss? How did that change so suddenly, so quickly? Oh, was that all just kind of a dirty, underhanded attack then? Meant in bad faith because Kamala thought, because the media told her that she had a big shot at the nomination and maybe the presidency, that whatever she had to do, she should do. Reminds me a little bit of what faces Elizabeth Warren right now. Elizabeth Warren, I hope she stays around just so I can pretend to be her. Because whatever I do it, people are like, oh, I know exactly who you're trying to do an impression of. She was on SNL over the weekend with Kate McKinnon, I think's her name, right? Yeah, pretending to be her. Why can't SNL just try to be funny? Why does it have to be like the DNC sketch comedy show? It's just pathetic, right? I mean, I guess it's NBC and that's just what we all are supposed to expect, but they're not doing any fun sketches like this with the Republicans anytime lately, at least not that I've seen. Anyway, so Warren is She's still waiting to see who she will endorse. And that's big because if she were to endorse Joe Biden, it would really be, for anyone who's looking at this and assessing what's going on, if she endorses Joe Biden, it is clear that her entire campaign about standing up to Wall Street and caring about the working class that was all just really a fraud. And it was all just, oh, well, whatever I have to say, whenever I have to say it. And so that's a possibility. But she knows if she wants to be in the cabinet or even just in really tight with the new administration. Administrations are very powerful, a lot of jobs to give out to people, a lot of patronage, a lot of access, a lot of power. If she wants to be on the good side of that, she's got to get on the Biden train now, probably, right? So that's one option. Or the other option would be to endorse Bernie Sanders. Here's what the Burn said about it. Play 11.
Can you win this nomination without the support of Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, well, I certainly would love to have the support of Senator Warren, but yes, of course we can. We can win this because we are going to win the support of working people all over this country who agree with our agenda that, among many other things, the time is long overdue to recognize that health care is a human right in this country, not a privilege. We must pass a Medicare for all single-payer program.
Now, this is what I meant. I meant to get to this before we had a transition between segments there. First off, I mean, Bernie saying, we can win without Warren, but we want her support. Yeah, of course, not a surprise. But Medicare for all, healthcare is a human right. We're seeing this experiment now play out in a sense, in a way that we should all pay attention to. It is the position of Bernie Sanders that if only there was legislation that said, if only the law in this country said that you have a right to go into any medical facility that you choose and to be treated, and it'll cost nothing. If only that law existed, we would be in much better shape right now, not just as a country in general, but in better shape with the coronavirus epidemic spreading. That ignores reality. You see what's happening in Italy, where they've had a really bad breakout that is now, I mean, I don't know the numbers offhand, but it's, you've got thousands infected. I think a few hundred have died, and it's still spreading, still getting worse. And there are, for a lot of the people that are getting infected, there are concerns about how long they'll have to be assisted in their breathing. What ends up happening is your lungs, when you get this, it's an upper respiratory infection. Your lungs cease being able to function, and so you need a respirator. You actually need help breathing, and that also prevents, because if your lungs become overtaxed, there can be other organ failure that occurs. I think liver failure can happen, and so they're trying to keep all your organs going as your body tries to fight off the disease. If you're elderly, this is the big concern, is that your body just becomes overwhelmed by this, and your already weakened immune system is not enough to fight it off, and then you have organ failure and you die. Pneumonia is a big concern as well, but you're seeing an analysis right now that'll make the rounds. There's lots of them on how, if this gets as bad as some people are saying, and that's what I want to walk you through. And let's say that it gets to the point in Italy. We'll keep it in Italy, where they have 50,000 confirmed cases, and of that 50,000 confirmed cases, they've got 10,000 people who aren't dying from it, but need serious medical care, like need to be in. What happens when they don't have enough hospital beds? What happens when they don't have enough respirators? What happens when they don't have enough doctors and nurses to attend to those individuals? That's the fear. Do you know what universal medical care does for that, in the sense that, a law that says everyone must get care, what it does? Nothing. You go to a hospital and say, hey, the law says that I have to be treated, and I'm worried that I've got, coronavirus, I can't really breathe. They're going to put you on a cot somewhere, and they're going to get you what they can get you when they can get it for you. Who are you going to complain to? Where else are you going to go? Nowhere. The government's the only checkbook on this issue, right? That's what we've been told is the best thing. Who are you going to go say, hey, hold on a second, I'm really worried. I need more help than I'm getting. When the doctor comes in and says, sorry, we don't have a a bed for you in the ICU, but we can keep you out here in this waiting room in the hallway, and we'll put you on an IV if we have enough IVs, and we'll try to get you a respirator if and when your lungs start to fail, but that's what we got. And by the way, I'm not blaming the doctor. That's just the doctor saying, look, this is what we got. Do you think that some law that Bernie Sanders would want to be the case where you could walk in and demand medical care? See, they don't understand that supply and demand exists whether they want it to or not. This is one of the fundamental failures of Marxism, which is what Bernie Sanders is, a Marxist. And I keep hearing people say, oh, wouldn't it be better if we all had universal medical care? No, because right now what you really want are people having to make very clear determinations about whether or not they should go to the hospital. And part of that is, in fact, the cost. I went to the ER for what I thought was basically flu once, and because I had fever and everything. It's like $1,000 to just sit there in the wait. I didn't even get treated. Just sit there in the waiting room and have them take my vitals, tell me my blood pressure was fine. Now go sit in the waiting room for 6 hours. $1,000. Guess what? I'm not going back to the hospital unless things are really bad. Bernie Sanders thinks that if we had the government writing checks for everybody, that would make it better when the situation is overwhelming the supply of medical care. That's the real concern. Well, what do you think the government's going to do? You're going to just manufacture more doctors? Just have more nurses appear like off an assembly line? Oh, we think the government's really good at training the best nurses? The government's really good at creating doctors? No. The market creates these things. The employment sector. And the different tools that are needed to make these hospitals able to have the facilities necessary to treat people. That's all. This is all. There's market forces with all of this. Bernie Sanders makes it sound like if only the government was writing the checks, we'd all be fine. That's because Bernie Sanders doesn't know what the heck he's talking about.
I think that we are at a tough point right now because there's a lot of people who are concerned about Joe Biden's ability to carry the ball all the way across the end line without fumbling. And I think that Castro has some really legitimate concerns about can he be someone in a long, grueling campaign that can get the ball over the line. But there are definitely moments where you listen to Joe Biden and you just wonder.
You just wonder is right. Cory Booker's telling us what we already know. This is the guy. Democrats are running around talking about how Trump is incompetent and people are dying in this country because of Trump's incompetence around coronavirus. And the alternative they offer is Bernie Sanders? That's their serious position? Absurd. Completely absurd. And also, we do have to deal with this problem. The three most likely candidates to be president going forward are all people in the highest age cohort of risk category for this virus. What does that mean? What should we think is going to happen here?
If Bernie Sanders is the Democratic nominee, will you campaign for him?
I will support the nominee of the Democratic Party.
But will you campaign for him?
I don't know if he would ask me to campaign for him, Fareed, because I have no idea what he is thinking about for a general election campaign. As I've said many times, I do not think he's our strongest nominee against Donald Trump.
Is that an endorsement of Joe Biden?
I'm not endorsing.
There's nobody left.
Well, I guess that's true. There isn't anybody left.
So Hillary's kind of like, yeah, I'll do what the party needs me to do, but I don't think any of these candidates are that great. I got a better candidate in mind. Not going to name her right now. Hello? Not going to name her, but she's out there. She's out there. Here's something that we have to discuss. You know, the calls to the media are for less public gatherings. You know, they have had journalists ask Trump, don't you think you shouldn't have these rallies? I haven't heard. Now, when I say this, maybe they have been asked this too. I haven't heard anyone ask Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders that. Bernie Sanders had a heart attack 6 months ago? And he's basically 80. And they're not asking him, but they're asking Trump. This is a real concern. And I don't know if anyone's really thought this one through, but you have Trump, Biden, Bernie. They're all people who are in the highest risk cohort in terms of their age. And in the case of Bernie Sanders, also complicating health conditions. When you've just had a heart attack, and Bernie Sanders, mind you, would not release his full medical history recently. He said, no, I'm not going to do it. I said I was, but I'm not. But don't worry. Why should we not worry? I mean, wouldn't anybody be worried about this? Does this mean that they're not going to have these rallies? I mean, we do have to take seriously the possibility that you might have a one of the candidates for president fall ill with this. And it wouldn't be something that we could just say, oh, well, he'll be fine in a week. These candidates are out there doing things. CPAC released, and this is all out there now. CPAC let it be known that they had somebody at CPAC who has tested positive for coronavirus. I don't know who the person is, and I don't think I wasn't there, so it doesn't matter to know the specific name at this point. But Senator Ted Cruz has decided to voluntarily quarantine himself. There are others. I believe Matt Schlapp, who's the head of the American Conservative Union that puts on CPAC, he has voluntarily quarantined himself. There are others who are staying with a voluntary 14-day quarantine just to be on the safe side. And, that was at CPAC, where you have a lot of people. CPAC is, for those who haven't been, I've been in the past. It's a lot of, handshaking, chatting, pressing the palms, talking to folks. It's kind of like a big political rally in that sense. Well, Trump and Bernie and Biden are going to be doing rally after rally after rally after rally, talking to people, shaking hands, getting close to them. And Trump has said, look, I'm going to do this, regardless. Very important that anybody who's going to be in that case or in that situation is keeping their immunity at the strongest level possible. It means, what are you eating? How much sleep are you getting? Are you hydrating enough? And another part of this is how much stress are you putting yourself under? Stress is very bad for your immune system. And I know that sounds very kind of new agey, like I'm sitting here doing a show where we should have wind chimes in the background and a bunch of, Buddha statues or something, and everyone's talking about enlightenment. But no, stress is very bad for your immune system, and being on the campaign trail is clearly a very stressful, very taxing thing. What are the chances that of these three individuals, Trump, Bernie, Biden, shaking hands with people, going out to all these rallies, one of them may contract coronavirus over the next 9 months? Remember, it may fade now, but if you look at, and I don't like pointing out the Spanish flu that was 1918. We didn't have antibiotics. We had a much less developed public health system, much less ability to communicate with different places about where there were outbreaks and what resources were needed. And there's a whole different situation going on. But if you look at just the initial spread of Spanish flu, and then the worst spike in deaths, the spike in deaths occurred in the fall of 2018. The initial disease popped up, I think, in February, March of 2018, but it was in the fall at the end of that year that you had this huge explosion of infections and deaths. So there is a very high likelihood that there will at least be another round of this, that there will be a surge again in infections and in possible deaths from this right in the height of the campaign season. What are the candidates going to do? They're going to stay home? They're going to not have rallies? I just don't think that that's realistic. But this is, I will say, I actively pray for the health and continued fitness of anybody, any of my fellow Americans, anyone around the world, although to pray for the whole world might be, well, I guess we can do that. So, but specifically, if we're talking about the candidates for the presidency, I want Joe Biden, I want Bernie Sanders, and certainly I want Donald Trump to be as healthy as possible, live as long as humanly possible, and, God forbid any of them come down with coronavirus. That said, I do think this has to be considered as a real possibility. Think about this could change history, my friends, is really what we're getting into here. If one of these candidates ends up getting coronavirus, that will change the whole nature of the race, won't it? That will change the 2020 presidential election, very possibly. Maybe they get it, and it's a week, and they're sick, and then they're fine, and then they move forward. That's also possible too. But this is now getting to a place where we can't ignore that, especially our political class is very much the top of our political class is composed of a lot of people that are up there in terms of age and are the ones that are they're in the most, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Donald Trump, Joe Biden. I mean, you look at Bernie Sanders. I mean, just go through the list. Elizabeth Warren, Hillary Clinton, all these different big political names. They're people who are in their 70s. And some of them are pushing 80. So they're in this high-risk category. Does that mean that they aren't going to continue to do what they have scheduled politically? Are they, what message would that send to the public? I don't have answers on this other than just to say that needs to be thought about a little bit. Should they really be out there shaking hands? Should they really be out there, just heaven forbid that moment when someone at a rally, some guy in the crowd, maybe he's just got allergies, like coughs on Joe Biden or something as he walks by. I mean, people are going to lose their minds. I mean, I'm taking the subway in New York all the time, which is one of the worst things you can probably do. I'm exposed to, people, millions and millions of people take the subway every day from all over the world, and this is just the reality of my life. But in terms of the transmission possibilities, the subway is a really bad place to be. Now they're scrubbing it down and everything else, as if that's going to make a big difference. I don't think it is. There's only so much you can do, though. There's only so much you can do. So as much as I like to counsel, stiff upper lip, keep calm and carry on, all that stuff, there's some stuff here that could really shake up not just American politics, shake up the history of this country if this continues. Well, this is kind of a surprise. New York State is now producing its own hand sanitizer, NYS Clean. Governor Andrew Cuomo has announced the product as a response to price gouging on hand sanitizer amid coronavirus fears, and it is made by New York prisoners in the Department of Corrections of New York State system. Around 100,000 gallons a day of the product is due to be distributed to places like schools, not-for-profits, and other government agencies. Amid surging numbers of novel coronavirus cases, there's a rush on hand sanitizers. Stock is hugely inflating product prices. Last week, a hardware store in Manhattan was fined for hiking prices on products like hand sanitizer and antibacterial wipes. We are problem solvers, Cuomo said on Monday, and there's price gouging on hand. What do? Make your own hand sanitizer. Well, yeah. Let's see how this goes. Here we got government deciding to create its own product line for hand sanitizer. From what I understand, hand sanitizer isn't really as effective a tool in this fight as a lot of people would like to believe that it is. I mean, I'm sure it's better than nothing, but remember, if you touch something and then touch your mouth or touch your eyes, your nose, you can get coronavirus or influenza, standard influenza, of course. But keep in mind, if you walk into a room, aerosolized droplets can stay in the air for about 10 minutes, and if someone sneezes, there's like an 8-foot spray of aerosolized droplets, 6 to 8 feet, I think is what people estimate. Depends on how hard you sneeze. And that just means you walk in, you breathe that in, or any of that mist gets into your eyes or your nasal passageway, you got coronavirus now, right? That's how this actually works. So the hand sanitizer thing is nice. Every time I read some reminder, don't touch your face, it just reminds me that 15 seconds before I read that, I had touched my face. I don't know. I'm not good at not touching. Maybe I need to shave my beard. I don't know. It's probably beard is probably not good for epidemiological reasons, but can't bail on the beard at this point. Also, this came out of so I was at church yesterday, right in sort of lower Midtown Manhattan, and I was thinking about this, and I had a feeling because at the end everyone gets called up for communion, and I was thinking about how the priest said, look, I'm not gonna put the host in your mouth. I'm going to put it in your hand and you put it in your mouth. We're not doing I put it directly into your mouth, which I've never been somebody that wanted the priest to, but I don't want anyone's fingers in my mouth. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I don't like that. So he said that's what they're doing. Well, now we got a problem because in D.C., and I know this church in D.C., a priest has coronavirus confirmed. He offered communion and shook hands with more than 500 worshipers last week and the week of February 24th. All worshipers who visited the Christ Church in Georgetown, D.C., must self-quarantine, and church is canceled for the first time since the 1800s. You know, producer Mark, I gotta say, one thing I've always been opposed to the little cup, you know, the chalice with the blood of Christ in it. You know, a good Catholic boy. I know all this stuff. The point I'm making is that they take the little like napkin and they wipe it. No, not good enough for me. Yeah. Sorry, especially now, but that's never been good enough for me. Like, I don't want a cold. I don't want cold sores. I don't want any of that stuff. And everyone drinking from the same cup. Would you ever do that in your,
not in a million years.
Not a million years.
No.
And this is what I've seen people do this all the time. And the priest does this little, like, he like wipes the slobber off. I'm like, I know enough about bacteria to wipes the saliva off, I should say, the bacteria to know that does not actually do anything really.
I won't even use a public toilet. Definitely wouldn't use a public cup.
Yeah. So there's going to be some changes in churches for sure. You know, church attendance is about to go down. I feel bad, but that's what's going to end up happening. When I was in church yesterday, and you know, for whatever reason, there's always I think it's because you're in a church. There's the cavernous nature of most churches here in New York. I mean, some churches are a lot smaller, other parts of the country, but most of the Catholic churches you go to here almost feel some are cathedrals, but a lot of them feel like cathedrals. They're very spacious on the inside. But you can always hear someone coughing somewhere, and like nobody really wants to be in church right now where there's anybody who's coughing loudly. That is not something that goes over well with the people around you. So that just means I think you're gonna have more people staying home from church. I don't know what it's gonna take for everyone to calm down about this a little bit. I just think that the media has managed to get everybody in this mood right now where we're all worried. There's all this panic buying of hand sanitizer and masks. The stock market's getting crushed. You know, this is the worst. Look, this is the worst, most down period of the Trump presidency so far, and it's really the scariest the country has felt since the 2008-2009 financial crash. I will note that was a systemic financial issue that a lot of people said did threaten the very foundation of the global financial system, and they can explain why that is. It's not just a theory. I mean, there were some real concerns that there'd be collapse of credit markets, and with collapse of credit markets, guess what? No bread on the shelves, no milk in the store, kind of thing. This is not nearly as financially bad as that was, and I don't think it should be. But if people keep doing this, keep going to these extremes, thinking that they have to cancel all these different events, they can't go out, they can't do things, and a lot of I was with a friend over the weekend, and she was telling me that there was self-quarantining going on now in her office. I mean, people are just saying, hey, I want to work from home. Producer Mark, we are soldiers for freedom in America.
Oh, I was just going to ask, can I just stay home for
that's
2
what
weeks?
I thought.
Yeah.
No, we come into work, all right? We come in here to the hut until I figure out how I can do this show with video remotely, then we can stay home.
We're more than 6 feet apart. That's
yeah. Plus, I don't sneeze. I think it's been a long time. So look, the other thing I meant to mention before. So New York State has its own hand sanitizer, but there's also advice from Governor Cuomo, and I just had to laugh about this one. He's come up with this idea: New York State clean or whatever. So okay. He also has said that if a quote subway car or bus is crowded, try to take the next one and avoid densely packed places. You will be waiting for a subway that is not densely packed during, the times when you need the subway forever.
Yeah.
This is not advice. This is absurd.
And even in the middle of the night, if you're trying to ride the subway, it's packed because there's only one train every 20 minutes.
Right.
So that'll never happen.
Right. This is crazy.
Yeah.
But this is where it is. We're being told avoid crowded subway trains when every subway train in New York is crowded. Avoid public places when people need to work, people need to do stuff. Life does have to go on. How long think about it this way. If our real plan here is to stop living our lives and to retreat into these bubbles of pre-quarantine, right? There's no reason to think you've been exposed, but you're just going to segment yourself off from from the rest of the population. When do we stop doing that? Because there could be an outbreak of this at any point in time. When do we decide that it's safe? Do we just all of a sudden allow this to, collapse civilization? I mean, I know that's extreme. It's crazy, but that's what it feels like people are starting to think in their heads is what's going to happen. And that's absurd. I mean, we made it through, not only did we make it through the Spanish flu, which did kill about 50 million people globally, but the Spanish flu, and then afterwards you had something called the 1920s. People refer to it as the Roaring 20s. We recovered. We got past it. People got it. They then were immune to it afterwards, and then we move forward, right? We're going to get through this. The panic is not helpful.